I don't know. All of this is somewhat new to me. I don't know why I chose to be a digital content creator. I hate it.
Why did you choose to be a digital content creator?
It chose me.
Oh,
Um, I fell into it because I started doing like, because I was really depressed for a long time. And a few years ago, I just started messing around with collages on my phone. And I eventually realized that this is what I wish I could be doing all the time, doing digital art. This is the only time that feels fulfilling, enlightening to me. So I, a few months later, I made the plunge, took the plunge, went to art school, or actually declared a major after 4 years of being in liberal arts college, and then went to the art school. And then 2 years later, now I'm going to be graduating with my studio BA this spring. And now I do like digital photography, music production, podcasting, digital art, graphic design, and other creative stuff, writing. So it just kind of happened because of convenience and being on my phone all the time. And then I realized that there's a lot of potential and it's a lot less messy too than traditional art. It's not as messy to, if you want to destroy or create something, you can do it like an infinite amount of times digitally, unless you mess up. But so convenience.
you said something about being depressed. What was that like?
I have said something about being depressed a lot of times. Yeah. So actually, since about age 11, I still suffer from depression, but for a stretch of about 7 years, I was actually suicidal and dealing with suicidal ideation and basically just living in a trauma state because I had undiagnosed PTSD. And then when I was 22, I was diagnosed with PTSD. And then I realized, oh, okay, that's what all that was. So, yeah, for a really long time, I just kind of, since I was about 11, kind of just spiraled off mentally and emotionally, socially, spiritually. I was very ill. Um, and it kept getting worse every year for until I was about 23. And that was about 2 years ago. So I've done a lot of progress in the past 2 years. But before that, there was a lot of bullshit going on. And a lot of trauma, various traumas. So technically I have CPTSD, even though that's not an official diagnosis, but I think it's complex.
What's the C for? Child?
Complex.
Okay.
Complex, yeah. So PTSD, it's a singular event, a singular traumatic event. Complex PTSD is more of a longer timeline of events, and then also like a trauma state itself. And by trauma state, I mean like emotion, like the dysregulation of your brain and neurochemistry, things like that. It's
And
not fun.
how did art facilitate regulation of the
That's it.
brain
Yes.
state?
I think it did facilitate regulation because it facilitated meaning and purpose. It facilitated a transcendent state, something that had layers of meaning to really high valued meaning. And it basically, I think the thing that really propelled me in the right direction, the main cataclysmic event would be embracing my identity as an artist archetypally, as a creative person, as an artist. And I've realized, yeah, everything can be described by that. I don't really need even a diagnosis of PTSD or any of my other diagnoses or, mental illness labels, or of course, like being trans or anything. It can all be described with being an artist. That's my excuse for everything. It's a very good excuse.
It's a great license.
Yes, it is. And I've just kind of leaned into that more and more and more. And I've committed fully to that bit now. and going to be, archetypally, I'm an art student, whatever that means. Archetypally, I'm a writer, visual artist, musician, all these things, and creative person. And that helped me realize, like, personality wise, like, look at personality in psychology, right? The different big five traits, like artists, a very high neuroticism, very high openness to experience. And so they have a fluid identity in and of itself. That's what it means to be creative. You can pivot and explore multiple avenues, divergence of thought. So that, I think, better describes me than any other label. Even though I like other labels, like I do use other labels to describe certain niches of my personality. Like, the trauma is kind of its own bag, but artist, that's how I prefer to brand myself.
And it gives you power over your stimuli internally and external?
I wouldn't say power, but I would say it helps me order the chaos. Like when I first started doing these collages digitally, right? You start with a canvas, you start with a square or rectangle canvas. And I started realizing very quickly, like, oh, I'm just putting my chaos into this little rectangle and it's organizing it. And now that's how I view art. And obviously part of art is making chaos too, and disruption, and there's many things. But for me, it's mostly about ordering the chaos into palatable little bites that I can tolerate and find meaning from.
Are you building a cathedral or a bunch of little birdhouses?
That's an interesting way to put it. They aren't birdhouses, but you could say that maybe they're birdhouses on the grounds of a cathedral, right? So there's smaller blocks of meaning that then all build together to create higher blocks of meaning. And for me, that all culminates under my artist name / philosophy / brand / persona, which is Funk God. So Funk God is my artist name. So everything to me is funk. And I see everything through the lens of funk, philosophically. So
what is that? What do you mean?
That's a good question. So it's basically chaos, because I started recognizing when I was about 18 or so, I was listening to a lot of Black soul music, like James Brown, funk music. So it comes from music, but it has kind of diverged off that. And I started realizing that, there's such a thing as a good funk and a bad funk. Like you can use them interchangeably. Like the way the musicians were using them was subverting that negative connotation of funkiness, which actually, interestingly, I looked up like what was the origin of funk, and it goes back to the time when early Black R&B and soul musicians would play, and white people would start referring to them as funky, because funky meant like to have a foul odor. So they subverted that and said, you know what, this is funky. Like we're working our asses off, we're like playing these jams and we are getting sweaty and who cares? They subverted that idea of bad funk into this powerful funky state, which was transcendent, right? If you listen to that music as like a collective spiritual experience. And so I started recognizing, there's like good funks and bad funks. And I'm so funky because God knows I'm in such a horrible funks all the time. I'm like suicidal, right? At that time, really suicidal, completely lost, having existential crises left and right, and diagonal and center. And I took that meaning of funkiness negatively and realized, but I'm also funky in good ways too. Like if you look up synonyms for what funk means, funky, like offbeat, groovy, syncopated, kind of on your own wavelength, unique, different. So I recognized there was these two polarities, these two juxtapositions of meaning, just hell and heaven, vaguely. And I combine them together into this idea of funk God. Like I'm a god of funk. I'm so funky, it's a mess, but also there's the absurdity of it too. So it's again, kind of this ordering the chaos idea So for me, when I make art and do all these other things, it's all become like the level of meaning is just unfathomable. Like every single little thing, like the plants, the clothes, every single thing in the arts and the words that I speak and the relationships I have, it's all the funky chaos that somehow is ordered together and arranged and composited in a way that has meaning. And I look at like philosophically, like absurdist philosophy, which is very similar to existentialism, but absurdist philosophy states that, everything is chaos, and because everything is chaos, it's a juxtaposition again of that human condition. So the human condition, we're wired to try and discover meaning and to create meaning and have meaningful lives. But then we try to find meaning and we're encountered this state known as the absurd. And the absurd is something, the highest, let's say, velocity of meaning, the highest intensity, frequency of meaning, and then the highest frequency of pain and coldness and suffering and cruelty that the universe also provides. So when you're in that state, it's absurd. And there's different ways to cope with absurdity. The three ways that the absurdist philosophers lay out are: one, kill yourself. And reason why I like absurdist philosophy too is because I've tried all these different things to certain levels, right? So first, you can kill yourself. It's so absurd, just kill yourself. That's one way to cope with it. Some people do that, and that's why people kill themselves, right? Because everything, it's not just because of one reason. It's because it's too absurd. It's too chaotic. It's overwhelming, right? So you can kill yourself. I debated about that for 7 years, actively, like every day. And, but they suggest not killing yourself, right? Because that would then be the most absurd thing of all, possibly, because you have like this propensity for meaning, capacity for meaning in your existence and life. And then to end that, well, that would just be the most absurd thing of all, right? So that's not a good solution. Second, you can believe in some kind of higher power to kind of explain away the chaos and give yourself peace of mind. So that's what I think most people do, God or some kind of higher power, the universe, whatever, But there's limitations in that. It's not ideal because there's, you're limited in your freedom and capacity to find other meaning outside of that. And a lot of people will accept that. It's a decent trade-off, right? Because let's say I believe in God, I ascribe to certain beliefs, and then I have preconceived notions of the world and I have paradigms to sort the chaos into. That's great. But also you're limiting yourself in sorting yourself into these kind of boxes and limitations and beliefs. And of course, at the extreme level, you can get into the corruption and all that jazz of religion and belief. And the third option is to say, okay, it's chaotic. I don't really have another higher power that I'm going to defer to. I'm not going to kill myself. Now I have to choose to create my own meaning. And basically, like I said, lean into the chaos. They don't use that language in the philosophy, but that's my, interpretation of it. Lean into the chaos, embrace the chaos, and don't fight against it. Don't avoid it. Don't try to create insane chaos, but the most pleasurable things in life are usually the things where you push it right to the edge of chaos. Like in comedy, for example, that's what it is. It's like sorting the absurdism of life, the chaos, into some type of meaning and order. But you push that line, and that's when you find the most meaning, it's a difficult task. But, that's pretty much what I tried to do. I was debating about killing myself for years. I really wanted to believe in some kind of higher power or God, but I just didn't. And since I was 14, I was an atheist. So that just didn't happen for me. I did a little bit try to believe in like the universe and maybe some more new age spiritual stuff. That didn't work out for me either. The absurd happened to me, right? So I had more existential crises. And so I basically, when I was 22, I took a semester off college because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I'd been in school for 4 years and I had no major. And I was just like, there's no meaning, right? I'm so lost and hopeless. But I feel like trying to kill myself or like trying to will myself into killing myself hasn't worked because I really should have done it by now if I was going to do it. Right. And in actually avoiding life and avoiding the chaos, I have now created so much more chaos. I'm not functioning at all. I'm not doing anything. And there is no meaning. So I kind of had this moment over a few months where I was just doing a lot of like meditation and stuff. And by meditation, I mean like sleeping as much as humanly possible and lying there and just breathing and things like that. And legit meditation, but that's where it came from. And that's again where the kind of lying around on my phone, making these collages, because literally I was just like, I don't care about anything else.
What do you mean collage? I mean,
by collage, I mean like on my phone, there's certain apps you can download, art apps, and you can make digital art on there. So they were mixed media digital collages and photo manipulations and just different edits, that you could do digitally. And so I started realizing like, the only thing I haven't tried is trying to live, and by trying to live, it was like believing in myself. Because for a long time, I wanted to believe in something else. I wanted to believe in, the universe, God, whatever. I just didn't. I wanted to believe mostly in another person, like a friend or a romantic partner. That never worked out. Again, I was met with the absurd every time. And I kind of realized like, no one is going to save me. Like there is no one, like I'm alone. Like I'm going to have to do this myself. And I was so scared of doing that because I didn't want to be responsible for my own chaos. And of course, part of this all basically comes from childhood trauma and attachment problems and PTSD. Why you're kind of seeking this benevolent sort of savior figure in another person. But I kind of realized like no one's going to do that. Like it's not going to happen. I have to do it myself. So simultaneously, I chose to try and live, try and find meaning, try to believe in myself, and try to forgive myself for letting it get to escalate to that point, right? Of doing a lot of really negative stuff to hurt myself and disillusion myself further. And that's when I got a full psychological evaluation because I was like, let's see if there's something else. And sure enough, I was diagnosed with PTSD. So that really explained a lot. I also started detransitioning around that time and accepting myself as a female and a woman and kind of processing, what had happened with the trauma and how it was all related to that, the transition. And I went back to school and tried to figure out what I wanted to do. I initially was like trying to take a safer route because I'd always had a forte for writing, like my whole life. And that's what everyone told me I was going to do. And I was like, sure, that's the only thing I care about. But then that got too depressing because all I was doing was writing like sad love poems all the time. I was like, this is not fruitful. That's not going to pan out. Too depressing. So I tried to go into something safer. So I was like, maybe like media studies, like editing. I was like, I'll just be an editor. I won't write. That takes the responsibility off me. But of course, that's not who I am, right? That's the trauma talking. Who I am is the writer, right? The person who does the writing and the editing and the publishing and everything else. I have to be true to myself in that way. And so that's when I realized, like, I hate this. It was actually my worst semester of all, even though it wasn't the worst I was doing. It was my worst semester. I just didn't care. And so I switched to the art program. I was like, I don't know what I want to do, but I'm being an art student now. And that was one of the best decisions I ever made, if not the best decision, because I was embracing myself, my soul, and actually being true to my personality psychologically, as I've realized over time. And yeah.
How did, you said that trauma was related to a gender fixation or issue or transition itself?
No, well, no. The opposite. the gender, the transition was related to trauma, and then it caused another trauma.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. So,
How did the idea of transition first appear within you?
well, it appeared on tumblr.com to me. It came to me online when I
This Tumblr
was.
place, it sounds like though just a crazy, crazy zone, putting
I
so
just
many
wrote. I just wrote an
intense
essay about
ideas
it.
into people. It's a theme.
Yes. Yeah. Well, the thing is, like, people like me would be drawn to Tumblr. I just wrote this really long essay about it on my Substack.
It's like your generation's hate Ashbury or Woodstock or something like that.
Oh
It's
my
like
God! Don't even disgrace Woodstock with that.
saying.
Yeah.
It's
No.
a
No. No.
muddy, busy, noisy, creative clusterfuck. Yeah.
Well, you know how Tumblr apparently advertises itself now is on the App Store is art, culture, chaos.
Okay.
And I'm like,
there you
oh,
go.
okay. It's pretty accurate. It's pretty accurate. Yeah. So when I was about 15, okay. So when I was from 11 to 14, I was, you know, the beginning of the trauma, let's say the genesis of the trauma. And by the traumas and different things, but depression, anxiety, PTSD, autism diagnosis that is like a demi autism diagnosis, which
What
is
does that mean? A demi?
yeah, that's it. I would like to know what that means too, because pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified. Okay.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if you've heard of that.
You have the mystery meat of brains.
I know, right? It just means like you have some autistic traits that cluster in an autistic-y way, but not enough to be diagnosed with Asperger's or autism spectrum disorder. But there's something going on with you. Maybe it's a little autistic, not otherwise specified.
Okay. So, but how would that make yourself make sense to you? Like the way that you interact with other people, the way that you categorize information, the way that your brain divides up and puts together the chaos of the world? Is that where it's nested, this autistiness?
I don't know, because like I said, this all could just be, it could be that maybe, or maybe that is just a manifestation label of being the artist archetype, that the highly sensitive, like I said, neurotic and open to experience and introverted and disagreeable, personality profile. That's what I think. But I was also having social difficulties, right? I had a lot of insecurity. I did really a lot of trouble with social stuff, hygiene, all this stuff. It could also just be called an existential crisis. I was very depressed. And when I started going through puberty.
You could just be a pubescent dame. I mean, it happens to everybody.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it was a little more extreme than that. It was just a rebelliousness, I guess, or I was very nonconformist, like nonconformist to the point where I was like, why should I even take a shower? Like, I don't want to shower. I don't want to wear deodorant. I don't want to even do anything. Like, why should I have to do any of this? I was very opposed to puberty, like mentally, emotionally, and physically.
Resist.
Yes. I was just like, okay. And I was opposed to the social aspect of it because I just called out my therapist basically says, Laura, you basically just called out the bullshit way earlier than everyone else. And that's what got you off, because everyone else was like, oh my God, like we have to do this new middle school dance. You know what I mean? Literally, but also, and I was like, why? I'm not going to do that. Hell, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to write my novels about wolves and listen to my jazz music and not talk to anyone. And, now I realize that was obviously there was some other stuff going on. Like, it doesn't have to be that extreme. Like there's some, like it makes sense to shower. I've changed my perspective on certain things as I've grown up. But young Laura was very not into it. And so from 11 to 14, it was this kind of period of time where I was very isolated. But then I started smoking weed, and that really lit up my brain and helped me to get over my social anxiety. And I made some friends.
How?
And
Like it just quickened your tongue, or it made you more amenable to recognizing that other people have internal worlds and you can swap ideas, or?
Um, it made me feel more open and receptive to others, but also I trusted others when we were smoking together to be more open and receptive to me.
Oh.
So it dulled certain senses and inhibitions and then released other inhibitions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I was kind of free to be able to speak my mind, and use my wit and humor and make people laugh and then connect with other people like that. Because I was doing all that stuff alone, or writing about it. I had the propensity for it. It just, I was too insecure and inhibited to actually do that or say those things with any confidence. So it just helped my confidence, and boldness level. And so I started having a real growth spurt and creative growth spurt. And I was writing all this poetry. I started writing a novel, but also it opened up other things. It opened up some of the past 5 years of trauma that I wasn't ready to deal with or I hadn't processed. So it opened up more anxiety and depression. I started like self-harming and being more suicidal. And so I'm not saying it's the weed's fault, but I'm not saying that, but I mean that those things were already primed and it just they were unresolved. So they kept getting worse.
What was your conscious intent behind self-harm?
I was bored. I was just trying it out. I was curious because I was like, everyone keeps saying that, I hear all this stuff about how self-harm, like people do it when they're depressed and it makes them feel better. I was like, that to me doesn't sound like it would work, but I tried it as like an experiment and for attention. This is basically most of my life, experimenting and for attention seeking. But, I think,
what was the level of it? Like slashing? I don't know the different things, but like putting your hand in a dish disposal or sink.
Well, there's many different forms of self-sabotage.
But it was, I mean, primarily physically then.
Well, yeah, when I'm talking about self-harming, I mean like specifically like cutting my arms. That did not last very long. That didn't take because I was like, this doesn't do much. This doesn't do anything for me. My self-sabotaging methods were my coping mechanisms that turned to be too extreme, right? I was indulging too much in certain things, food and porn and, different things. So, and weed and alcohol and eventually other drugs. So when I was 15, my consciousness was just expanded, right? And it was great. But also there was some bullshit going on in my consciousness that was unresolved. And meanwhile, I was on Tumblr and getting very interested in, as one does, in culture and feminism and these different things. And I just learned about gender identities. And at first I really loved it because I learned about these labels of like gender queer and what it means to be queer. And to me, I was just like this eccentric little unformed artist girl that was like a little autistic maybe or whatever. And I was like, oh, finally like a real label to describe me. So the way I felt about queer was the way I felt about the artist label now. But the artist label is actually backed up by like psychology and different things. But the queer thing was it was abstract. It was so abstract, doesn't really mean anything. But at the time, it meant something to me. It meant that I could be my flamboyant and eccentric self. And part of that meant being androgynous. And like I said, I've always been nonconformist, and I used to be more, well, sometimes I have interesting outfits today. But again, the artist excuse. But back then, I was a little more autistic about it. Some of it was more androgynous than it was. And there's my sexuality issue, which is being heterosexual, which I consider an issue still to this day. It's probably my biggest issue. Well, it's a subset of issues, but
Because of men being men, or because of
because of my attachment problem. Well, if you would have asked me that a few years ago, I would have said yes, because of men being men. Now I realize it's because of my attachment problems to men, who tend to be somewhat like that, men. I have attachment problems to men specifically due to childhood trauma. So my relationship.
attachment. Like you're obsessed with this person. You can't get them out of your head. You want to be around them all the time. You want to kind of just devour them or become them, or could you unpack that?
Yeah, you could say that. I mean, there's different attachment styles, but the style you're describing is my style, which is anxious, preoccupied attachment, which is that feeling of emptiness, and you want to kind of merge souls with a person, and you need them, and it's codependent, and you can't survive without them. That sort of attachment style. But there's other ones. There's other ones too. But I developed that, and so I started, and of course that manifested very negatively for me because I was kind of eccentric. My hygiene probably still wasn't the best. I was just a very funky teenager. And again, when I say funky, it can be the highs, the extreme highs and the extreme lows. So funkiness. I developed several unrequited, obsessional, limerent, unbeknownst to me, attached problems, relationships with gay men. Because part of the anxious attachment is being attracted to unavailable people. So who's more unavailable than a gay guy? Now, part of this is also teenage naivete, because everyone was figuring out their sexuality as well. So these guys didn't know they were gay, but they kind of used me to figure out that they were gay, which it didn't work out for me very well. I had 3 of these in a row. And they kept escalating in how bad the trauma bond was and how bad the attachment problems were. And I was getting increasingly queer too. And so increasingly more androgynous. And of course, by the time
you were approaching their ideal in a way, the gay male ideal. By becoming kind of a male, you're becoming more of what ideal. They would desire? No, okay.
Not their ideal, my ideal of what a gay man represented, right? For the women filter, right? The female filter of what a gay man represents. But part of it was also to appease them. I mean, it was all very irrational. Let me just say it was all very irrational and disjointed. But part of me, basically by the time the second one happened, I completely blamed him not loving me. All right. So it's black and white thinking. He doesn't love me. Why? I can't think of any reason why, because we're best friends and whatever, except that he's homosexual and I'm female, but I don't even want to be female. What has being female ever done for me? Wouldn't it be better if I could just be myself, or be more accepted, be more loved, and be loved by the people that I love? So it's in this convoluted way of thinking it would be more ideal as a gay man with my artisticness and sense of humor and sexuality, and part of the sexual stuff is that I was very sexually intense. So I've kind of since realized I'm just intense in general. So it's really no more intense than anything else. But it was a lot more intense than any other woman that I saw, and especially with the porn and everything else. And so I was like, that's maybe more male typical sexuality. Now I've since realized, no, it's pretty female typical with my oxytocin bonding and all that. But, I'm like, okay. At the time though, I was only 17 and 18. So I didn't know much about that. Female and male typed behavior, except based on stereotypes and things. And I was just so quirky. I was like, it would maybe be more ideal in some ways, and I would be more accepted by society. I would feel better about myself. I'd be more attractive. And part of that also is it's not autoandrophilia, but it's it lets, I don't get female aesthetics don't do much for me. They don't do anything to where the male aesthetics do a lot for me. and when I see myself as this person, as this creature, and you're trying to fathom like yourself, and it's trippy, right? So, and it's like, okay, then you put the woman filter on it. And then it's like, well, I don't like this because it's just not pleasing to me anyway. Like even just, it's just not as pleasing to me to look at. So again, it's not like autoandrophilia, but it's more just like, I just enjoy looking at male bodies more. You know what I mean? Like, and so seeing myself with a beard or imagining myself with a beard or things like that, it was more like, yeah, just like aesthetically, I just prefer that. I like humans that look like that. And I don't feel attractive, and maybe I would look more attractive if I looked like that sort of thing. So all the mapping of all the maps were out of place, right? Mapping my own lens onto things. And then with these unrequited loves, I was so suicidal because when you're basically trying to, I realized this later on in hindsight, I'm like, okay, so I was trying to have this person be like my father, my brother, my son, my best friend, my lover, my soulmate, my mentor, my God, like all of these different things, right? You're not finding other sources of meaning from other places, and you can't make it internally, or you don't think you can. One person becomes your God, and then you worship them as a slave,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure everyone knows about that, but it's more extreme when you have like the CPTSD. So that didn't work out because he didn't accept me. And then another person, even worse, another even more confusing situation happened when I was 18, where this person was actually telling me like, I am attracted to you, and it doesn't matter if you have like female anatomy, like I am sexually attracted to you. And then he took it back several months later, which is like unfathomable to me right at the time, because I'm like, I couldn't understand why someone wouldn't love me. And of course that I still sort of have that problem I'm working through, which is, it comes from childhood trauma of not being properly loved by a caregiver. So I'm just like, I just don't understand, like philosophically, spiritually at my core, like, why does this person not want to be with me? It really doesn't make any sense to me. So I manifested all of these things as like, well, the problem is just me. Clearly, I'm the like common denominator of all these situations, and my body and all this. And I've never liked my body anyway. And my problems started happening, at the start of puberty. So, I've always resented it. I've always resented my breasts. I've always resented this whole thing. I never asked for this, right? I'm still not over that. I didn't ask for puberty. And I was the only one, like, it's just speaking of puberty, like all the other kids were like, wow, I can't wait to like be older and grow up. I was like, no. I don't want that. I don't want to grow up. I want to, whatever this is. Like I sort of maybe recognized a bit more than some of the other ones. Like, I think there's some shit that's going to happen.
What do you mean? Having a job, having a career, being normal?
Yes, I think well, I mean, like this was when I was like 10. So what does a 10-year-old even conceive of adulthood or growing up or whatever? But puberty just hit me really hard. It was just like child mind. Oh, now I suddenly have all these really crazy adult things going on. And of course, it's not as extreme when I look back on it, right? Because it's like, what adult things did I have? I didn't have like the responsibility, that I do now, of course, as an adult. But like, I wanted to stay in that childlike mindset. I was very afraid. I was intimidated by the responsibility of my own power, my own autonomy, my own strength. And I was for a really long time, up until like the past 2 years. So yeah, unfortunately, like a lot of my transition stuff, it wasn't really the social contagion. Like, yeah, I was introduced to it on Tumblr, the concept, but I just ran with that, like I didn't have trans friends. I didn't have anybody. It really was mostly to do with sex and love issues.
Okay. But so you say you don't have anybody, but do you have anybody to process all this stuff with?
Oh, right now?
No, I mean like during this time, 17, 18, 19. Do you have a priest,
guess who
a coach, a counselor, a therapist?
Oh, God. Yeah. So, mostly I was trying to process it with those people, which, you could imagine how well that worked out. No one really seemed to understand what was going on with me, my family, friends, or they just said like, Laura's just so depressed. We literally don't know what's wrong with you, right? They were kind of taken up by the absurdity. And when I saw a counselor, when I saw a therapist, when I was 18, I did like her. But she told me, I don't understand the gender stuff. I don't understand this. Can you maybe seek out someone who does? And so I tried to seek out people who did, but everyone I talked to, I just got the sense they really didn't understand what was going on with me. Like maybe I think it was partially bad luck or like me not knowing how to advocate for myself or whatever. But every person that I saw, I just felt like they were out of their depth. I felt like they didn't get me. They didn't understand. And they would just say to me like, well, you're valid, whatever. Whereas I was like coming to them with like ideas like, listen, like, I don't want to be trans. Like that to me seems like a really bad idea, right? I don't want to be trans. Sounds hellish and maybe it might make life worse for me. Limit my dating pool, like all these things. And so I said to them, like, I believe gender dysphoria is a mental illness and I have this condition, I'm suffering from it. Like I was looking for another option besides transition, which is to me one of the most messed up things because it's like so many stories you hear, people didn't even think that maybe there was another option. Me, I was like, is there? Like, I really want another option. And no one said anything. No one gave me another option, which is just so irresponsible. And I felt like I was very alone. And in many ways, I was alone, right? Like people were telling me like they don't understand me. And I'm feeling rejected by all these people. The relationships aren't working out. They end up like ditching me because they can't deal with it anymore. And it's unhealthy for them at this point to have a friendship with me or whatever. When the one-sided unrequited obsessions and stuff. So I kind of am just spiraling more and more and more. I go to college and I'm 18 and I'm doing all this writing. And again, all I'm doing is writing these sad poems, wanting to die. And even the writing joy that I had from that is gone. Like it's all very dismal, just a lot of pain. And I blamed it all on myself. And it escalated. Like I came out as trans when I was 18, or 19, right at the start of 19. And I, kind of just like, I didn't want to be trans. Like I tried to find like pride in it and everything, but like, I was like, really, I mean, I feel cursed. I really felt cursed of my love. I felt my love was a curse. I felt my brain was a curse. I felt this all was a curse, right? It's a common sort of thing with the PTSD. Feel like you're being punished for something. So I was like, well, what else? What other options do I have? So again, sort of doing the absurdist philosophy thing without really being aware of what that was. I was like, I could kill myself. I could believe in God. And I wanted to believe in something. I wanted to believe in love itself, actually. That's what I most believed in, because to me, like you're having extreme feelings of suicidalness and then you're like obsessively in love with someone and you're just like, that's meaning right there. Like I can't obtain it, but that's meaning and I need that. And like, so like I saw that there was some meaning in the world, love. And I was desperate to have it, but I couldn't get it. So, that made it all more absurd. But at the same time, it kind of showed me that there was like another path towards something. So I was like on the right track, right? I was trying to, I was on the right track of like trying to get my needs met and all these different things, but it was just skewed by the trauma. And I eventually came to the point where I'm like, I don't know what else to do. Love has failed me. My family's failed me. Everything's failed me. I failed myself. I have to do something drastic. Otherwise I'm going to kill myself. So that's when I said, all right, I'm going to transition and just see what happens. And of course, there was also a bit of like convincing myself in my mind and the typical stuff, but it was like, yeah, pretty desperate. Like it was
Hmm.
really out of desperation. And then I got testosterone and then I
What was
had
that like?
surgery. Oh, testosterone was, let's just say, if you're moody, horny, and angry, don't
Already.
do testosterone. Yeah, if you're already, don't
That's your
do
baseline.
testosterone. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's your baseline. Don't
Oh
do
no.
testosterone. It made me so much more reckless. And I started acting out because at that point, I felt like I had been fucked over so much by these particular people. And like, I was to the point where I like was somewhat homophobic just due to the pure hatred and like resentment that I had towards these particular individuals who I felt betrayed me or confused me or whatever. So I was very angry. I was very reckless and I started acting out, doing a lot more drugs, doing a lot more drinking, driving, like everything, the road rage, like, and I just basically had a moment where actually about a month after I got the testosterone prescription, I admitted myself into the psychiatric hospital for the third time. And I went in and I basically came out of there and I was like, you know what? Like, I just don't care anymore. Like the testosterone, I think something snapped where I was just like, I just was like, I choose to be selfish now because I felt like I was being really like self-sacrificing and empathetic with trying to love these people. Like I thought I was doing them. Like I'm trying to like give you like the best thing in the world and you can't, you won't accept it. Like it's just this whole thing.
Hmm.
So I had just snapped. Right. So I was just a huge asshole. I was getting into fights. I ended up losing my whole friend group because I was just being so, toxic and just out of control. And
Hmm.
and then I had the surgery, and that's when I was 20. And I had the surgery, and after the surgery, I just lost all my friends. Like they just like blocked me. So it was like really, really bad timing.
Was the surgery additive or subtractive
To what?
to your body? Did you
Oh,
take things off or
yes.
put
I
things
said the
on?
surgery. I mean, mastectomy. Yeah, thank
And you were
God it
alone.
wasn't additive. Yeah. And I was
So
20. Yeah.
you're 20. You take this part of you off, and then all your friends are gone. So you're
Yep.
adrift alone. And
I just had surgery. I just had like a medical thing that, of course, I had not processed at all. And I was like doing so badly. The surgeon actually said, like, you need to go off of testosterone, which I had never heard of before. But he said for the surgery, for the mastectomy, you have to go off of testosterone just in case it has interference. And I was like, I didn't want to, but I did. So I had to go off for like a month or two before the surgery. And then once the surgery was done, I just lost all my friends. And I was like, I am doing so badly right now. I probably shouldn't even go back on the testosterone. But in my mind, I planned to go back on because I'd only been on for 7 months. So I planned to go back on when I got mentally well, which I was like, who knows when that's going to be. So I actually went off it. And after that, I was like, I think I better just cool it because it was basically damage control after that. Cause I was like, I have no one, I literally have zero friends that I could even talk to or call. And I just had this surgery and I better stop the drugs. I better stop the drinking. I better stop all this. So pretty much I just rested. I just slept a lot and sleep was my main coping mechanism. And I also have kind of a sleep disorder, probably from that. The fact that sleeping for me was the best way to just turn off. Like, because when you're high or drunk and doing any drugs or eating or whatever, masturbating or whatever it is to distract yourself, you still are conscious. So I would sleep. That was like a mini death to me, like practice death. It was like I can just, but then when I wake up, it was like all just hit me. So I would just try to sleep as much as possible. Then I got involved in a few other negative relationships because
or did you join the mob?
the mob. No, I joined Grinder.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh,
yes,
okay.
Grinder, which
So
is
that's a gay dating app. So you were a gay
yes,
male on there, or is there a
yes.
specific category for the
Well,
trans man seeking?
yeah, so I was always very open about being a transsexual, right? Like I didn't like the
Okay.
transgender identity. I was like, I'm not a man. I want to be a man. I'm not. So I was like, I'm a gay trans man. You know, I was very honest about it. But I didn't have very good luck on there. And of course, with my attachment problems, I seeking out people that weren't the best, and I ended up kind of getting into not so good situations, but I
Is
didn't have
there
any
a
friends. So
Is there a, I'm really sorry to use this language, but there's this group called tranny chasers that are known as straight men who seek to have relations with transsexuals,
yes,
transsexual women specifically. Is there that kind of, I don't mean to say the word fetish, but that type, the person with that taste, is there a type that is seeking that experience, seeking to hook up with, specifically with, I guess, young trans men in the gay community?
that's a good question. You know, I never saw that. It might exist. It would be a very much smaller than the population that's seeking transsexual women. My target range was like much older bisexual men, because I felt like those are the only people that would want me, right? And also my attachment problems and bisexuals. Like I kind of, for a while, I was trying to like get with like, normal, attractive gay guys my age, but I kind of learned like, yeah, that's not going to happen. And there was the only people that were really seeking the FTMs were other FTMs. So I suppose maybe they were lesbian or bi women. I'm not sure what they were, but I wasn't interested in them. So I was seeking older bisexual men who, let's just say older bisexual men are, they're not the best population to get involved with, especially if there's drugs involved. So I was resting like more, but I wasn't totally resting. I ended up doing some things. And after then, a much older bisexual man actually broke up with me because he wanted to be with men. You know, that was a whole like, okay, really again? Like I went through all this again, it's the same thing as before. So that's when I really just took the break. I was like, I'm done. I got off all my medications. I had horrible withdrawals from Klonopin that I've been taking for anxiety for like 2 years.
What's Klonopin?
Clonazepam, Klonopin. It is for anxiety.
It's a benzo?
It's a benzo, yeah.
Okay.
And it was a really awful withdrawals.
I hear that that's not an easy road to back
No,
out of.
it's not. And I just quit cold turkey, had like a bad trip for like 2 weeks straight, slept as much as possible. And I also got off venlafaxine, Effexor, that was the worst.
What's that? Is that another?
Effexor is antidepressant.
Okay.
And it's known to be like one of the most extreme antidepressants. And I was
And how long have you been on that?
Years. I was on that for 3 years. And it took me like
From
months
what
and
age?
months. Maybe 17, 18.
So, I'm sorry to interrupt. So you're diagnosed with this strange nondescript autism thing. You're probably diagnosed with anxiety and depression to such an extent that the medical industry is medicalizing you. They're drugging you. You are having suicidal thoughts. You're checking yourself into mental stay homes. And they still go forward with allowing you to to deconstruct your body and get on a synthetic hormone. The medical establishment just, if that's what you want, that's what you want. There's all these other conditions there.
Yeah, let me get into that because this is obviously translates into some of what I do today. Well, all of it does, but so my psychiatrist is the main perpetrator in this, because I went to her and I told her, like, I'm trans, I'm having gender dysphoria, I'm thinking about transitioning and having surgery. And she basically said, I am somewhat familiar with trans, but I will look it up. I will research gender dysphoria. And I think the next time I saw her, and keep in mind, this is my psychiatrist, not a therapist. So I only see her to get medication. And I'm very inconsistent also because I'm fucked up about getting medication, having appointments, keeping appointments. all that. So I don't see her very much. I see her like every couple months for like 40 minutes, 50 minutes. So I came back the next time and she was like, I've done some research based on what I've read in WPATH. You meet the WPATH standard, you meet the WPATH diagnosis for gender dysphoria. And I think you are trans. It was that simple. Like there was no discussion. And so she wrote, so the surgeon required 2 letters. So I had her write a letter, and then I went to my GP and my general practitioner, and she, no questions asked, just wrote me this letter. And even I was a little surprised. And looking back at the time, I even felt like, oh, that's kind of weird, like that she literally just wrote this without even questioning me. So I think subconsciously, I this is the thing. I wanted someone to question me. Like I was begging for attention. All I was doing constantly was crying out for attention all the time, and online and everywhere else. But I just wasn't heard. That's why I do all this today. That's why I have like a podcast. That's why I do writing, all of it. Because just, I didn't have a voice. My childhood self didn't have a voice either. She just wrote me this letter, and maybe within a month, I was in the hospital. So I clearly wasn't doing well. And what's ironic is when I read back the letter that she wrote, she said, Laura appears mentally stable. She claims she's not suicidal. She seems stable for surgery, which I'm just like, I wasn't stable for surgery at all. I was in the hospital like within a month for suicide ideation. When I went to the informed consent clinic, they gave me testosterone. I told them the whole spiel because I'm a very open person and I just talk about my problems very casually. But unfortunately, I tend to talk about my problems, at the time, I was very articulate. I'm still articulate, but at the time I was articulate, and I probably appeared more competent than I really was, right? I was not competent at all. I wasn't even like showering, or I was doing drugs, wasn't doing anything. So I told them everything, told them I was suicidal. They said, oh, here's the testosterone, So no checks and balances. And then the surgeon, he got the 2 letters. This is the real kicker, is on the day of the surgery itself. I had just, like, my best friend had just blocked me and told him he never wants to talk to me again. And I was like, dying inside. Right. And so I told the surgeon, like, I am feeling kind of suicidal, like today, the day of the surgery. I told him, like, I'm not doing well. And he was like, well, is it related to the surgery? And I was like, no, it's not related to the surgery. It's about other stuff, which was true. And, he still did the surgery anyway, which, of course, looking back, I don't think he should have been doing surgery on someone who was actively suicidal for any reason. Now, was it related to the surgery directly? No. Was it indirectly related to the surgery? Yes, it was, because it was all of this was just because of the PTSD that was undiagnosed. And even if I wasn't diagnosed with PTSD knowingly, the medical field didn't know that, I still was presenting with suicidality. Like I was actively suicidal and not taking care of myself and, really messed up. And another red flag I will say is from the surgeon's perspective, even if he ignored all that stuff, another red flag is the fact that really my biggest concern with the surgery at the time was, do I have to stop smoking weed? Do I have to stop smoking weed for the surgery? Like that was my biggest concern. And he said, yeah, you have to stop smoking weed. And I didn't want to. And I'm sure I probably didn't even stop smoking weed, So like, that's the level of like maturity and competency and rational thinking that I had at the time of this mastectomy when I was 20. And so after the surgery and after those weird encounters and the grinder stuff and the drugs, I just stopped doing anything. And that's the time when I took a semester off college. Oh, I also took a semester off of school right after I'd been prescribed the testosterone, and the semester leading up until the surgery. So I was doing so bad, I didn't even go to school when I was getting the surgery. So I took another semester off when I was 22. Or 20, I was technically 21, but I was almost 22. And that's when I was doing the resting. That's when I was doing the sleeping and started doing the collages, started doing the meditation and the mindfulness. And I would listen to these mindfulness meditations, and it was just basic stuff, right? That I just somehow it escaped me for all my life, which was just like mantras that were like, you are worthy of love. You know, you can forgive yourself. You need to accept yourself. And I joined this DBT group for like 6 months, but I got kicked out because of attendance problems.
CBT or
DBT?
What's that?
Dialectical behavioral therapy. Dialectical, it basically means like holding to opposing thoughts or opinions at once. So it actually is a modality designed for people with borderline personality disorder, which I actually had a lot of borderline traits. They overlap a lot with CPTSD. And that was really effective for me. That really helps me. So when I learned about mindfulness, emotion regulation, meditation, grounding, and radical acceptance. So I was doing some radical acceptance stuff because it was quiet. I was alone. I had no distractions. I had no one. I had nothing.
What's the principle of radical acceptance?
Yes. So the radical acceptance principle is that you, at the core, you just accept yourself for what you are, which is a person that's alive, and you don't put a value judgment on it. And whatever has happened, you just accept it for what it is. You don't put a value judgment on it. And that kind of leads to letting it go and being more rational about it. So I had a lot of things to accept, mostly myself. So I started doing that. I started doing some forgiveness stuff, and that kind of softened me up, I guess, to the point where I decided like, okay, am I really going to kill myself or not? Like, moment of truth, Laura, like, are you really going to do it or not? Because it's been a while and we're not doing anything. So, and I was like, yeah, I'm probably not going to, because I did an evaluation like of my life and myself, and I praised myself basically. And I was like, well, okay, let's weigh it all. Am I really that bad? Like, am I really that bad of a person that I need to kill myself? And I kind of decided, like, I'm not a good person. Like, if black is bad and white is good, I'm not black and I'm not white. I'm sort of a more like a lighter gray. So I was like, okay, I'm morally gray. You know, that's not that bad though. So when I broke it down a little more rationally, I was like, maybe like I'm not as bad as I thought. And like, maybe there's some other stuff I can try. Like, maybe I should just try actually accepting myself, for example, or actually loving myself. And that, you know, led to me doing some more assertive behaviors that helped me get on the right track, meet the right people. Eventually I met the right therapist, who's my current therapist, who's amazing. And
how did you know that that was a good match?
Well, I specifically looked for someone who understood detransition. So there's not, you know, it's been hard to find, but I did find somebody. I recognized that she not only understood the detransition and the gender stuff, but she also understood me as a person, because we have a lot of things in common. So she kind of, you know, I kind of know some about her life. And so the main thing is that she's the only person that's viewed me holistically as a person. You know, she doesn't like diagnoses or labels. So she, you know, will just say like, no, like archetypally, like you are just a creative person. You know, you're like Prince, you know, you're like Freddie Mercury. You're just this intense force. And it's really hard and it's really lonely to be that type of person. And people don't understand you sometimes. And that's what's happened to you. And it's not your fault. Like, none of that is your fault. And so just having like real empathy and getting outside of that clinical diagnostic sphere.
And then you started to embrace that archetype of the...
Yes, I was really nervous about it, right? Because you imagine, like, I was so insecure about it. I'm like, I can't even draw. Like, you know, I used to draw. I used to do creative stuff. Obviously, I was writing novels, books of poetry, whatever. But I was insecure about anything besides writing. So I did the visual art, the photography, and it just started getting better and better. And I kind of embraced the idea like, well, maybe it's not good, or maybe I can't make a profit off it, but it's still meaningful to me. And so I'm going to keep doing it. And now it's eventually somewhat translating into that business. But I embraced that, and I just started doing more of the radical acceptance. And Got into school, just did more therapy, started getting to the root of my childhood traumas, which is the big thing. And now I have a really solid understanding of what happened, how did it happen, who am I, who was I then, my inner child, just therapy, just good therapy, it seems so radical. At the same time, though, it's like these resources might have been out there. I just didn't know about them. I guess no one I knew about them. But so, it's really a sad story. It's especially sad to me as I review it. I have been sort of getting into a better place more recently where I feel like I have accepted a lot of things, but there's other things that were really bad that happened more recently. But I kind of understood those, like more attachment problem stuff happened because I still didn't understand that. Now I think I don't know if there's any like novel, profound realizations that I'm going to have about myself that are as life-changing as any of the other processing that I've done. So I still realize things every day, but none of them are like going to cause a paradigm shift like all those other things were. And now for the past 6 months, I've been pretty heavily involved in the mental health advocacy stuff. Part of that's Detransition stuff, of course, but I don't like to look at it, what I do, or this whole quote unquote community as like a Detrans community or advocacy, or I mean, it is advocacy, but I look at it more as like mental health because that's really at the root of all this stuff. And so I actually do a lot of stuff now. Like I try to help people by sharing my experiences, and giving them a framework for what happened. So in a way, I sort of view myself as a little bit of a martyr because I'm just like, well, this is my excruciating pain. Twitter, make of it what you will. Use it for public good, and I have but the thing is, I always keep a sense of humor about it because it's the absurdity and you need to have that. So, I don't mind like, sure, use my pain. Like it wasn't being used for anything good. That's what art for me is about. I'm like, oh, I use this for something. I have a lot of it lying around. I might as well use it for something, right? So, I talk to people. I actually do consultation with people. That's how like much I've healed up in my...
What do you mean consultation?
Consultation. So I consult with parents, and I just talk to them and I listen to them and their experiences. And I'm kind of in this interesting place where I have a unique perspective because I just turned 25. So I'm semi-adult, but there's still it's very fresh. The childhood stuff, the teenage stuff, young adult stuff. So I'm in this nice little zone where I'm rational enough and mature enough now to speak to other adults and older adults and parents with my insights on a level that they can understand. But I also retain the insight and understanding of these teenagers and young people. So a lot of the parents view me as somewhat like a surrogate daughter to them almost because, I kind of provide them as they say, like hope, because they can see that this archetype of girl, and this is my own realization, like this is an archetype of girl. For me, it wasn't quite like ROGD, but it's an archetypal girl, this autistic-y type. Maybe they have autism, maybe they don't. But they're intense, they're neurotic, they're sensitive, they're creative,
Anna
they're
Green
artistic.
Gables, Pippi Longstocking kind of thing going on.
I'm not that familiar with those girls, but yeah. but the type of girl that's the wallflower. She's kind of dreamy, she's idealistic. In the darkest manifestations, this like the crazy borderline like bitch, psycho bitch. Like that's how that can manifest, right? That type. But in the nicer frame, it's kind of that innocent, naive sort of autistic girl that's shy and introverted, but she has this rich inner world. Mm-hmm. She's idealistic. She's very empathetic. She wants to do good by other people. The social justice stuff, that's how that trickles in there. So that's what I offer to the parents. I kind of explain to them like this is not in all cases, of course, nothing is black and white, but it's an archetype of this girl. And a lot of the detransitioners I talk to relate to this and can fit under that. But especially the younger teens that are going through this. And I also do some mentoring as well. I have a couple girls teenage girls that I mentor, because I think for me, something that would have been really helpful is having
big sister.
A big sister, because I was actually the oldest sibling too. But also like having a mentor, a positive female role model that was like them, you know, this really intense. So that's sort of what my therapist is for me, like this kind of intense, you know, but overall, you know, very functional person eventually. But, you know, I didn't have that. I was like, there's something wrong with me. I relate more to gay men, and kind of, you know, a lot of detransitioners talk about this, especially the lesbians. They didn't have role models. You know, they didn't have role models for butch women and things like that. I didn't have role models for this funny, quirky, intense girl. Like they're either the punchline of a joke in media, or they're like the ugly, weird girl, or they're the crazy, weird girl, or they're just irrelevant, or they're not as androgynous or like gender nonconforming as I was. And I used to be a lot more androgynous than I am now. Now I've kind of become sort of more of a hippie. So I grew out my hair for that purpose, if anyone's wondering. I didn't grow it out to be more feminine. I grew it out because I did a lot of acid and I became a hippie. But, you know, as I had to commit to the bit even further, the eccentric artist.
So there's, you don't sound like a person who is taken to group behavior. Seems like you're comfortable being a lone gun.
It's an interesting way to put it.
The field of play, or the field of discourse right now, is basically always going to be dominated by groups, you know, kind of group ideologies, you know, and in the context of Twitter, Tumblr, etc., you have different kinds of activisms. You spoke about advocacy. It seems like you're more interested in one-on-one or the individual first kind of stuff. Do you, is that true? And what do you think about all these different groups going on and fighting each other and stuff? Are you tempted by that? Annoyed by that? Don't care about that?
Yeah. So you're correct. I don't like group dynamics. I very much like one-on-one, individual, holistic appraisal of a person and another person. And frankly, when you add more than one person, you know, when you have more than two people, it's a whole other element of chaos. So, you know, but I don't like a lot of the group dynamics. I do recognize it in all planes. I don't want to say side, but if you're looking at a cube, all the different faces of that cube, all of them, right? I was into the radical feminism for a while, like 6 months when I first detransitioned.
Okay, so
yes.
In detransition, the gender critical thought process was helpful for you to put things into a different or reconfigure your thoughts on gender, and you're accepting your femininity or your womanhood.
Oh yeah, yes, precisely. That, you know, because I never really related to women. I was so obsessed with men. But yeah, initially they helped because they kind of started writing some materials I found on Tumblr, and they pointed out traumas linked to this. And I was very into it for a while. It opened up my eyes to a lot of the abuse dynamics of the left and different things. But pretty quickly I got tired of it because a lot of them are not too kind to people who love men a lot, like I do. Even though men have hurt me deeply, I have a special place in my heart for them, and as a human as well, apart from sex, passion, eros, but just as a person, right? You know, I'm not going to like kill half the population. So I just couldn't deal with that. I couldn't deal with the dogma of the, you know, some of the gender critical radical feminists. So I quickly broke off from that and started being more involved in the detrans specific people, which there weren't that many people. Now I see there's a lot there's other players involved, right? There's the parents, there's the therapists, there's the concerned public figures, you know, the politicians and the kids and the detrans people themselves and the feminists and the media personalities and these different groups that are involved, organizations. And I don't really care for any of them too much. I mean, there's very specific people that I respect and what they do, and what they say I agree with. But that's why I say on my profile, like on Twitter, I say I'm everything critical. Like there's nothing that I'm not going to critique, because to not critique something would mean to have no curiosity of it. And I have a lot of curiosity for everything. So I'm a bit too much. So, I don't want to leave any stone unturned, and especially for myself. I can't deal with the humorlessness. Oh, God, I cannot deal with the humorlessness. I can't deal with the political correctness. Like, for example, people, some in these spaces, they're very apt to talk about gender, and they're so, avant-garde how they speak about gender. But if you introduce any other thing like race or sexuality or men or anything else, like they still lose their minds, just like anyone else that they're criticizing. So I don't care for that. I very much am just doing my own thing.
You want the freedom to be you.
Yeah, I want the freedom.
You paid the cost to not be you, and now that you get to be you, why would you give that up for imaginary likes and hatred on the internet?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, very, very true. I mean, and just it just goes against my humor too. I'm just like, if I can't joke about something, then it means we can't talk about something. If we can't talk about something, it means that there's something to hide, or that there's something I don't trust what I can't talk about. So we have to be able to talk about everything, joke about everything. That's how we understand things, people. Just people. You know who you are.
Yeah,
maybe you don't, but they know.
If they made it this far, if I haven't chased them off already, which I do from time to time, but they come back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I like to kind of temper. That's why I have this podcast that I actually do with Vincent Dabani. He's been on your channel. He seems kind of a random dude, right? But, we became friends. And so we have this podcast called Trans Psyche, because I want to reclaim the prefix trans, first of all. But so journeying across. So trans means across. So journeying across the mind is our catchphrase that I came up with. So
journey across the minds.
Yes. That's how I had to think of a good way to say it when I was recording our intro. Journeying across the minds.
Journey across the minds.
Yeah.
There's a lot of mind. It's a minefield, right?
Yes, it is. You have to be careful on that journey where you step. But we have this whole thing. It's about, just this exact thing that we're talking about. We have to reframe things from a humanist psychological lens. So we're very interested in the psychology of it. Of course, Vincent is studying to become a clinical counselor. I need a lot of therapy, so it's a good dynamic. So and he's like exactly twice as old as me. So like we have this very interesting dynamic, like male, female, we're across hemispheres, across the world. I'm in the US, he's in South Africa, and generations and all these things. And he's gone through a lot of these disintegrations and journeys. And I am now presently modeling them. And so that's what I say about being a martyr somewhat, because I don't mind being a martyr because it means I get to talk about myself. But I like to, I'm modeling the process as it's happening in real time. That's also my excuse for my like insufferable tweets that I make sometimes that are so depressing, like in the 3 a.m. And also my other
jokes. Pretty intense, but they're not. There's never. It doesn't seem. There can be a form of self-confession, especially online self-confession, that's self-exploitative or desiring of pity, and they don't seem like that. They just seem like a piece of your flesh that kind of like kind of fell out, and you're like, oh, there's a piece of my flesh. It's still pulsing. See that,
Well, I'm glad it comes off that way. That is pretty intense the way you described it, but
it's pretty intense stuff.
Yeah, but to me, again, like I have a certain level of, I don't want to call it jadedness, but like comfort. Like that comfort, like that stuff doesn't bother me. It just is, to me, it's just another part of my personality. That's why I'm the funk god, right? Or, because it's just, I have kind of have a metaphor that I like to say, which is like, when I grieve something, I like to climb down into the grave and lie right next to the skeleton. That's how I mourn something.
Okay.
It's never very tempered with me. But then at the same pulse, I can get up and I can laugh at the absurdity. I'm like, all right, Laura. So I make those tweets and all that, and I'm like moping around, crying every day and all that. But then I'm like, Laura, come on, like get out of here, brush this dirt off, go make some pasta, go do this or that. Like, and I just kind of get up and just go about the rest of my day. And I don't mean that to sound like in a bipolar sort of way, because it's not that. It's more like, I'm just like, oh, all right, I've done this for the day, off to something else. But I do like to get around those skeletons. I put my skeletons out in the open. I don't have any in the, well, I keep them mostly out of the closet. And because when you're telling the truth, like if you always tell the truth, you never have to worry about being like right or wrong necessarily. Like I'm speaking my experience, and no one can really say shit. And if they do, they're being an asshole, because this is my pain you're talking about, sir. So if they're talking shit about, like online, if they criticize, if they're saying some things that, I'm just like, that's not cool, man. So there's, it's rough on online, as everyone knows, but you gotta have a sense of humor about it. And,
well, you gotta keep it at arm's distance, but,
yes, I have set my settings to certain settings where I don't see random replies. I only see replies from my followers. So these are the people that should like me at least a little, they
or know what they're getting into.
Yes, they know what they bought. Yeah.
So enough about you. How are your creatures doing?
Oh my God. I was hoping you might bring that up. My creatures. Yeah. My 4 rats.
What are their names? Binky, Boppy, Doopy, and Stoopy?
No, Danny Elf Rat, Conan O'Brien Rat, Norm Rat Donald, and Cosmo, the Cosmic Rat.
Who's Cosmo based on?
Just cosmic.
He's just cosmic.
Just cosmic, yeah.
Like
the other ones are all based on men that I love. So, especially
what do they
Norm.
do all day? When you're crying? Do they sing to you? Have you taught them sympathetic songs?
They lick me a lot. So with all the grooming, they groom me a lot, especially Norm. Norm is like super attached to me, which I love. I've had him since he was 4 weeks old. So he's super attached to me. And he just grooms me constantly. We play a lot. They come around, they jump around, climb. We play a game called Rat Toss, because they actually love to be tossed around.
Yes.
Yes. And it's exactly what it sounds like. They'll come up, I toss them up in the air like a juggling ball, or like you toss up a baby for the same reason, like to build trust and stuff. But like they love that.
Yeah.
And also rat toss, like they come by me, I'm sitting on the floor. I throw them on the bed. Like I just throw them, on the bed, and they love it. They scurry back for more. They want to be tossed again.
Wow.
They just love that. So they're very playful. They have a rat climbing tree. It's just a cat tree, but it's a rat tree. And they have a huge cage.
Have noticeable kind of different personalities? Like what's the bandwidth on the personality? What's the spread?
Oh, yeah. They all have different personalities. Like I said, Norm is my really affectionate one. He's a mama's boy. Cosmo is a little bit more shy, but he's like a stuffed animal. Like he's just so limp. He just lies there. Like you just cuddle him. Danny is my adventurous one. He's very bold. He's very assertive. And Conan is the more shy and insecure one. He's a bit more skittish. So they all have distinct personalities.
Do you take them on walks?
I was going to. I tried to find a rat leash. It didn't really work out. I briefly considered maybe like just walking around with like a stroller, but like that's kind of a lot to deal with. So I don't really take them outside. I did try to take Danny outside in the backyard one time when I was photographing, and he jumped down and got lost, and I thought he was going to die. I thought he was going to die for sure. I found him. So I don't take them outside, but I walk around with them on my shoulder, That's, I don't know if people know, but rats like to climb around your shoulder like a parrot. So you walk around multiple rats on your shoulder, in your head.
Are you going to do a separate YouTube channel just with your rats, like Rat Times or something like that?
On my pro social Twitter account, I kind of post rat content. I mean,
Rat content.
yes. I mean, people seem to like it, although I did get criticized by a couple strangers because I posted a video I was trying to give the boys like some candy, and they just were fiending for it. And I was trying to eat this candy after I gave some to them. And so all four of them were swarming me, and they try to yank open your mouth to get at it. And then some people were all like, why do white people be like this? And just criticizing me about, the rats
Whiteness.
Whiteness. And I was like, yes, if this video had anything to do with anything, it was about whiteness.
Yeah.
Clearly, you got the point of it.
Whiteness and the patriarchy. Can't forget about the patriarchy.
Well, yes, but see,
it's another crew.
Yeah, that's a whole thing. People surprisingly haven't talked to me that much about the patriarchy, mostly because, like...
Have you heard about our Lord and Savior, the opposite of a savior, our Lord and oppressor, the patriarchy? I'm sorry.
No, I know. The patriarchy has come up for you a lot, so I understand.
I'm a walking patriarchy pun machine, just dad jokes and raping women with my nose. Just the way that I angle it into the camera.
My God, yeah.
I'm still off-gassing some recent drama.
The Exalansic thing?
Yeah, we
don't have to get into that, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It's just, it's periodical, and I don't even like talking about it, but I felt like I had to talk about it because I had my dad in town, and I was like, Dad, what are you into? Like, were you ever into music or like art, or he was kind of he was into a car at one point, but he's just not into anything except for morality. He's really into morality. So we ended up speaking for 2 days just about morality and all of its different manifestations, personal, social, and and then my YouTube channel is basically, I have a lot of moral questions around what I'm doing and, and ethical concerns, and then, interfacing with different groups, and everybody else has their own morality, and there's competing moralities going on. So it was just kind of a rich discussion. And then after 2 days of that, and then all that drama happened, I'm like, I should kind of think through this out loud, And then people are like, I don't like your channel. It's just become a drama channel. I'm like, I've done like 100 interviews and then one little 10-minute video and then another 100 interviews, but whatever. Everybody's like, the moment you land a subscriber is the moment you start losing the subscriber,
Yeah. People will follow me, and then they'll follow me based on some very thought out pro-social tweet thread. And then they'll see the dick jokes and all that other stuff. And then they're like, oh, no, I didn't bargain for that. But that's why I should have a disclaimer. Like, I like to suck dick. I'm not currently doing it, but I do. And if you don't like that, I'm sorry, but I'm not the account for you.
Wow.
Yeah. That's the lesbian.
You remind me of Megan Murphy.
Oh, okay. Is that a good thing?
That's a good thing.
Okay.
She popped that one. She popped off on that on a live stream once. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
You don't hear that often.
Yeah.
It's not in the people I interview, but I'm grateful for the open honesty, because there's people out there that are into that too. So, like there's
right.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Like this whole, community is so like, it's so somber, right? Because it's like, I get it. And like I said, I clearly.
Detransition community?
Detransition. Yeah. It's very, it's hard to, like, I think I'm one of the fewer people that kind of like have a sense of humor in the way that I do about it. I'm not criticizing anyone else, but it's like I said, I will crawl in the grave. Tits off, dude. I mean, really. So I'm allowed to have a sense of humor, okay? First of all, I had a sense of humor before that. That's why I have a tattoo of Jerry Seinfeld over my self-harm scars.
Oh, yeah. Okay, where's that?
That's right here, man. Not a good...
It's literally... It's literally...
I know. I made that bodily decision the same year as the mastectomy. So again, this is proof. Again, I was not rational. I wanted to get something funny over the self-harm scars to cover them up, but like I didn't think about the long-term implications. So the Jerry Seinfeld tattoo is a metaphor for the transition, you know? Also, Jerry would hate this. He would hate it. I know he would hate it.
Think.
He would hate it, dude. I know he hates it because you know how he is. Like, well, I don't know if you do, but like he's Jerry Seinfeld, right? He doesn't appreciate that. He's not going up to fans and being like, yeah, that's, great. I like that. Good placement of it, Laura. Like he wouldn't appreciate that at all. So
I appreciate the humor of it.
Yeah, no, the funniest part of it is kind of, well, it had good intentions, right? But the road to hell, right? I have another tattoo too, which is
it Kramer?
It is the genie from Aladdin.
Okay, that's
because
cool.
Robin Williams. So, but yeah, my bodily decisions. Yup. So
let's keep the audience wanting more of you. So why don't you plug your products? Where can people find you and your work?
Okay, so I am on Twitter at Detranny, D-E-Tranny. And I have a Substack where I post my essays and stuff, Funk Life on Substack. Also, you should definitely check out my website, funkgod.com, where it has everything. It has my arts, my graphics, photos, everything. I also have the Trans Psyche podcast, which is on YouTube, Twitter, all the podcast platforms, and I have my music. I have a full-length studio album of funky jams, self-titled Funk God, which is on Spotify, all the platforms. So what else? Also, I'm going to be speaking at the GenSpec Detrans Day of Awareness conference.
When's that?
That's a good, I think, Detrans Day of Awareness is March 10th.
Okay.
So I'm going to be speaking at that. There's going to be a lot of other good speakers, and I'm also designing t-shirts for the event. So I have a funky little lizard that will be available soon for t-shirts for Detrans Day of Awareness.
Please
marketing the trauma.
Yeah. Marketing the trauma.
Marketing healing. But that sounds like you're going to be scamming somebody. So marketing healing. It all. Marketing funk. This is funk is everything. Funk is life. Yeah.
Thank you for your story, Laura. Thanks for speaking out and being.
Well, thank you.